provided in a liquid form. So that's an example of, that's another example of non-conventional farming system. Then we have peri-urban farming. It was noticed that, in the cities, they would clear all of the land and just construct buildings and buildings and buildings. However, and to get food into the cities will be very expensive. You will go to food far away from the city. So to transport the food from the farmland to the markets within the city would be very expensive. And apart from that, we don't want to remove all the plants from any area, any city. So this is a way in which we can still have urbanization taking place. We can have cities and large buildings being constructed, and still at the same time we have plants around the city. So it's an agricultural practice within and around cities. So around the city you have some small spaces, and within those spaces persons will grow their crops. The advantage of this, as mentioned before, lower transportation costs. Low transportation costs meaning that the farm is next to where people are living. So from the farm, you take the produce to the market, and from the marketplace, persons would purchase their produce instead of transporting the produce for thousands of miles, hundreds of miles. Reduce the effect of climate change, and the reason for this, because we have plants, the plants will be taking in carbon dioxide. As you know, in photosynthesis, the plants produce carbon dioxide and water to produce the food. So the carbon dioxide that is released into the environment will be reduced when these plants take in those carbon dioxide. A little more sophisticated method is to use rooftop farming, and the urban areas with skyscrapers, as shown in the diagram there, they can use the roof and grow their crops. Because the roof would be very nice to use, because you would have sun, the plants would be exposed to sun all of the time. Of course, a lot of planning need to be put into place to ensure that you have proper drainage and so forth. And here's another very modern way of farming. It's called vertical indoor farming. And this system is mostly an automatic system. They would put the plants there, and everything will be adjusted automatically. The amount of water that will be added will be automatically added, and the amount of nutrients that will be added. So very little amount of labor will be needed. But as you can figure out, this will be very costly to produce food. Again, this would be more suitable for countries, in temperate countries where they experience winter. It's like a large grow box where you control everything here. So you control the amount of the heat, the temperature, you control the temperature, you control the amount of light. And in this case, the plants can grow a little faster than in the natural environment, because what can happen here is that the plants will can be exposed to sunlight 24 hours. Not sunlight, but they can be exposed to light for 24 hours. And in natural environment, the maximum amount of time that the plants might be exposed to light would be 12 hours, 12 to 14 hours of sunlight. So this would allow, in this system, the plants can grow much faster. Now we will look at another non-conventional farming technique, and that's organic farming. So what is organic farming? A definition is given here. It is defined as a production of crops, animals, and other products. So it's not only the production of crops. When we usually talk about organic farming, we tend to think that organic farming deals with plants alone, but it can also deal with animals and livestock and other products without the use of synthetic chemicals, fertilizers, synthetic chemical fertilizers, and pesticides. Transgenic species. Transgenic species are species, they take the gene from one organism and insert it into another organism. or antibiotics and growth enhancing steroids or other chemicals. So basically, organic farming, you're trying to grow the plants naturally. You're trying to avoid chemicals that are made in factories synthetically. You're trying to avoid pesticides. There might be times that pesticides can be used, but very limited amount of pesticides, and they are organic pesticides that can be used. And these pesticides will have very minimal effect on the environment. Organic farming is really to produce food that will be healthy for us human beings to consume. And at the same time, when we're producing the food, we take into consideration the environmental impact. We're not going to destroy large areas of land. We're not going to produce lots of pesticide into the environment to harm the environment and things like that. That's the aim of organic farming. There are certain principles that would govern organic farming, and there are three of them that I will briefly touch on here. So one is the maintenance of ecological balance and biodiversity. Biodiversity refers to all of the different organisms that are found on Earth. So as I tried to explain earlier, you try to avoid destruction to the natural environment. You see ways in which you can grow the crops without harming the environment. Use of integrated pest and disease management of soils. For example, you use biological controls, and we'll touch on that again just now. Instead of using chemicals to get rid of pests, we can use biological control. Biological control means that you're using an organism to get rid of another organism. And we can also use organic pesticides. Organic pesticides are made from plants and from animals. And you can also use things, for example, neem. Neem is known to control parasites in animals. So some livestock can be fed the leaves of neem, and the neem leaf contains chemicals that would kill those parasites. And there's some insects that are also repelled by the neem. So for example, neem oil, or you can make your own neem oil, and you can spray it on the plants, and that will help to repel insects that may be affecting those plants. And the third principle of organic farming is called companion planting. As you may already know, there are some plants that act as natural pest repellents. Two examples are given here that you should be familiar with. White basil, that's very common in Guyana, and thick leaf thyme. The image that you see there, that's thick leaf thyme, and these are known to repel insects. So when you're growing your crops and you have a bed, next to the bed, it's at the head of the bed, it's recommended that you plant these crops, and these crops will help to repel certain insects that can cause damage to your plants. So organic, we're looking at weed control here. So in controlling weeds, it is discouraged to use herbicides. Herbicides are chemicals that will get rid of herbs, plants. Usually, the different types of herbicides. Some are selective, and some will just destroy all of the weeds that we have. So herbicides, especially synthetic herbicides, these are totally discouraged. Instead, what can be used is hand weeding, meaning you use things like cutlass to get rid of the grass. But as you can figure out, that would be very labor intensive compared to using herbicides. Hoeing, mulching, and the hoeing would be to get rid of the weed, of course, and mulching. Mulching, you can mulch using either plastics, and the image is showing an example in which you can cover the area around the plant. There are special plastics that can be used, and those plastics will prevent the growth of weeds. And the way in which it does this is that it prevents light. It prevents sunlight from getting onto the plants or the weeds below it. And if the plants don't have sunlight, well, they can't photosynthesize, and therefore they will die. Another very simple way is when you cut the grass, you place the grass around the plant, and that's mulching, and that will prevent. It will serve the same purpose as the plastic, as I mentioned before. The grass will prevent sunlight from getting onto the plants below, and therefore they will simply die and they will not be able to grow. Biological control is encouraged. As I mentioned before, biological control is where you're using an organism to control another organism. For example, duckweeds. Duckweeds in the rice farms. That's a big issue for rice farmers. So one biological control could be the use of ducks. Ducks will feed on duckweeds in the rice field. Long ago, we had lots of ducks in the rice field, but persons, they would have killed most of them and used them for food. Curry duck. Organic farming, we're looking at, this is pest control now, ways in which we can control pests. Organic pests can be used, organic pesticides. Organic pesticides, these are pesticides. When we say organic pesticides, it means it comes from a natural source. You didn't go into a lab and make up these pesticides. It came from an organic source. Example, Bt toxins. Bt is abbreviation for the bacteria. The bacteria name is Bacillus thuringiensis. Bacillus thuringiensis. It's a bacteria that produces toxins. It produces a chemical, and this chemical will help to suppress or to get rid of insects and other pests that are affecting the plant. So the toxin is removed from these bacteria and used to control pests. The use of biological control, for example, we can have fish. Even if you're looking at rice fields as an example, you can have fish in rice fields. So certain species, not any kind of species of fish. You choose the species that will control insects. So you can introduce fish into the environment, and you can also have praying mantis. Sometimes we may want to get rid of praying mantis, but they're very useful. The praying mantis will capture some of the insects that are present in our farms. Cultural method can also be used, and that's hand removal of pests, and that's not so easy for farmers to do, especially large-scale farmers. It means that you identify the pests, and you probably use your hand, or if any small device, and you remove the pests manually. And you can use this method as hand removal is suitable when you have very small amount of pests. But if you have a large farm and the farm is infested with a lot of pests, well, then this will not be a very suitable method. Organic farming, in terms of pest control, one of the best methods to use is called IPM. IPM means integrated pest management. Integrated pest management. Integrated means you are integrating, you're putting together some different techniques together, and those techniques are going to be environmentally friendly. They're not going to harm the environment as much, and they are going to get rid of the pests. Example, one of the ways in which we can use IPM is to grow pest-resistant crops. There are certain crops that are not affected as much by certain pests, and we can use those crops. We can use biological control. We use a combination of method, and some of the method that were used above, we can combine them together, and that is what is referred to integrated pest management. So that brings us to the end of week's 1 lesson. If you have any questions regarding anything that was discussed in this video, or if you have any questions regarding the notes that were sent to you, or any questions regarding the previous lesson, please do not hesitate to reach out and ask those questions. I expect you to fully participate in every activity that you're given. I expect you to watch all of the videos. I expect you to go through all of the notes, and I will be sending a quiz shortly regarding this week's topic. So I expect you to fully participate. If you are not participating, and when it's time for you to sign up or to register for a CSEC examination, well, then you would have a hard time actually getting that opportunity to write the exam, especially those of you who have access to the internet and are not show much interest in completing the work that is presented to you. So until next week, I wish you all the best.